Committee. The Council will be recording this evening's proceedings and they'll be live streamed on YouTube. My name is Councillor Vincent Stopps and I should be chairing this evening's meeting. We'll be undertaking the meeting as close a fashion as we can to how we normally take these meetings. The virtual meeting technology has a chat function. Please only use it to raise technology related issues. I certainly shan't be monitoring it. Just remind you, when your camera is turned on during the meeting, please ensure that you're visible. Participants have registered their interest to speak in the meeting. You should only speak when invited by me. Only one person should speak at any one time. If you've registered to speak, turn on your microphone when you're asked to speak. If anybody disrupts the meeting, we've got the capability of throwing you out, and we will use that facility if we need to. In the event that there's an internet outage, we'll all try and get back on and restart, but that hasn't happened yet, so let's hope it doesn't happen this evening. Any members, if you're not able to participate fully with the item, then you need to take yourself out of the decision. You must be visible and taking part in the whole of the item. I'll just ask members to introduce themselves first. So I'll go along this top and I can see Steve, Councillor Race.
Thanks, Chair. Councillor Steve Race, Hoxton East and Shoreditch.
Thank you, Katie.
Councillor Katie Hanson, Vice Chair.
Michael.
Councillor Michael Levy, Springfield Ward.
Claire.
Councillor Claire. Councillor Brown.
Okay, you were slightly distorted there, Claire, but I think we caught you. Peter.
Councillor Peter Snell, Dalston Ward.
And Claire.
Councillor Claire Joseph, Victoria Ward.
Thank you. Welcome back, Claire, for your first proper planning meeting since you had your child. Congratulations, by the way. So how this meet, and then I'll introduce. We've got our head of planning with us. We've got Gareth, who some of you have spoken to, the committee officer, and we've got our legal officer, Christine, here to advise us, along with a whole raft of other planning officers. It will hear each application summarised by the officers, a 5-minute statement from the objectors, and a 5-minute statement from the supporters, the applicant. Members will then be free to ask questions. It's my role to make sure that members have the information they need to make a decision. Objectors and applicants have the say, and that the meeting runs properly. I'll not be taking any contribution from the floor. This is a meeting in public and not a public meeting, and so you must have given notice to the Governance Services Officer before the meeting and register to speak. As I've said, you'll have strictly 5 minutes. Where there's more than one speaker, you need to divvy that time up, but we're not in that position this evening, so each of the speakers has 5 minutes. Members are not representing their wards nor their political parties. We make our decisions on the basis of site visits we've made, what we've read in the reports, and of course what we hear this evening. And we must only take account of the policies adopted by this council, other material planning policies and material planning considerations. Members making the decision should not have allowed themselves to prejudge any application prior to the meeting. Similarly, if they have an interest in the application site, all the people involved, they should declare that interest and may remove themselves from the decision. When we've finished our deliberations, we'll vote, and I'll remind you how we vote in this system. And when the decision is made, that's the end of the matter for the committee. The applicant may appeal our decision to the Secretary of State, and objectors may seek legal redress. I'd advise you to speak to professional advice in either case. We've been asked informally, and I think the officers are getting the word, that we should have a break if we have a meeting that goes on for longer than an hour or 2 hours, I'm going to suggest that we break in mid course. That's between the two items. I hope that's a natural break. If it's just if it takes longer to get through the first item, then we'll have to break into it, but I hope not. And we'll now move to the agenda. And just one more thing to say, we've struggled to get papers to everybody. I don't know if anybody's got papers, actual papers. If you have, you're very lucky. Otherwise, I'm working off iPads, etc. So it'll be a bit slower than normal. Do shout if you need a bit of time, and we'll make allowance for that. So if we can move to the agenda. Apologies for absence. Brian apologised this evening to me.
That's correct, Chair.
Any others?
Not that I'm aware of, Chair.
Declarations of interest. Just for me, I live on the next street to the Barrett's Grove item, but it's far enough away not to have any significance to me. So I'm happy to take part in that meeting, in that item. Minutes of the previous meeting. Anybody got any issues with those? No? Okay, so we'll virtually sign those minutes.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much. There are item 4. Is anything put forward as by the monitoring officer? There is nothing. So we can move straight on to item 5. I've briefed everybody. I think if you're involved in item 5, put your camera on. If you're not involved in it, please put your camera off. So excuse me, I'll just have to wind up my iPad and try and find my papers.
Pedal faster, Vincent.
Pardon?
I said pedal faster.
Pedal faster, yes, okay. Mario told us a clever way of zipping the Google Suite. So it is possible to actually have one set of papers, not sort of 8 parts of the papers. So here we are, item 5, Thaxted Court. Right, is everybody else ready? I'll take silence as assent. So over to you, Louise, please.
Great, thank you. I've tried to cut and paste all of the plans into my presentation, not the one I'm going to give, but they're at the back of the presentation. So if you need them at any stage, since you don't have them, hopefully I'll have them there and we can have a look at them.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Can you see my presentation?
Yes, it's winding up now. Yes, it looks like good.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. So the proposed development is at Fairbank Estate, which is in Hoxton West Ward. It's for a new residential-led mixed-use development comprising 73 residential units, ground floor commercial units, and wider landscaping and play space provision. This aerial view just shows Fairbank Estate as it currently is. The estate is centred around Thaxted Court, which is in the centre of the site, and is an 18-storey tall residential building. And it also contains Halstead Court to the south, which is a 6-storey building of maisonettes. A large 2-storey car parking building is located in the northeast of the site, with surface level and sunken parking surrounding Thaxted Court. The next few slides just show some photos of the existing estate. So this photo shows southwest into the site, the car parking with, well, the 2-storey car park building with the 2 Halstead Court and Thaxted Court visible behind. These photos from East Road show the car parking and car park building on the right with the storage buildings, which will be demolished as part of the scheme. These photos show the base of Thaxted Court and the surrounding sunken parking. These photos show the far west of the site on the corner of Ellerton Street, which leads to the Provost Estate, which you can see to the rear. Okay. The proposed development is for 3 new buildings. each of which will be 8 stories tall. The north and south buildings are located on the site of the previous car park building and storage sheds to the east of Thaxted Court, while the west building is located on the entrance to the sunken car park. The overall scheme will provide 73 residential units across all 3 buildings from floors 1 to 7. The north and south buildings also have commercial units at ground floor. Car parking for existing residents of Thaxted and Halstead Courts will be re-provided between the west building and Thaxted Court. The overall tenure of the residential units is 50% affordable, with a social rent to shared ownership split of 75 to 25%. These are part of the wider housing supply program being undertaken by the council, which seeks to achieve a high level of social rent across all the scheme. The development also proposes new landscaping, open space and play space across the site. As you saw in the photos I showed earlier, the basement of Thaxted Court is currently exposed and residents access their homes across a walkway above the existing car park. One of the benefits of the scheme is to infill around the base of Thaxted Court to create a ground level which is largely consistent with street level. This allows Thaxted Court to become part of the overall estate and knits the wider estate together. Play space is also provided for children living on site. You can also see just in the bottom left-hand corner there a small storage building which is being used to re-provide some of the storage that has been removed in other parts of the estate. This CGI shows the proposed north and south buildings when viewed from New North Road. The north and south buildings are largely similar in scale and design. The north building, the one seen on the right, contains 28 residential units, all for social rent, and a commercial unit at ground floor. The proposed materials include high-quality, light-coloured Peterson bricks and glass-reinforced concrete panels. The concrete panels are used for the balconies, creating strong horizontal banding across around the centre of the building, with decorative bronze handrails providing further interest. This is just a plan showing the ground floor of the north building. You can see the commercial unit there on the right. This is a typical floor plan, where it's the floor plan for floors 1 and 2 of the north building. You can see a central core with units clustered around it. Each unit has a corner facing balcony. And then these are the north and east elevations of the north building, showing you more clearly what was provided in that CGI image. This CGI is looking north along East Road and shows the south building located just to the north of Halstead Court. It's a similar design to the north building with 31 units overall, 5 for shared ownership and 26 for private sale. The south building has 2 commercial units at ground floor and a residence room which could be used by residents of the estate. Those can be seen here, commercial units on the east and south and the residence room in the top northwest corner. This floor plan is similar in design to the north building with a central core and surrounding units, all with at this level corner balconies or the balcony there. And again, as you can see from these elevations, the design is similar to the proposed north building. The scheme has to be designed to be tenure blind, so there is very little difference between the north building and the south building. And here is just a CGI of the south building of how it might look at night. And here we have an image showing a CGI of the west building. The west building contains 14 units, 4 for shared ownership and 10 for outright sale. It is located to the west of Thaxted Court on the corner of Ellerton Street. It is linked to the north building by a colonnade designed in similar materials to the building. This frames the estate on its northern boundary and helps ensure the west building reads as part of the wider estate. The west building doesn't have any commercial units at ground floor. It's just got a re-provided substation, refuse and cycle storage. The west building has 2 units per floor, and each one has either a north-facing or a south-facing balcony, as well as smaller ones to the facing northeast and southwest. As can be seen in these elevations, the building is very similar to the north and south, but just on a slightly slimmer scale due to the site that it's located on. This image shows the impact on the grade 2 listed building in the foreground of this image, before and after. That's 53 New North Road, 53 New North Road, and the lamp holders out the front, which you can't really see in this picture, are both grade 2 listed. It's noted that there is some benefit to, some impact on the heritage buildings, but it's considered to be less than substantial harm, and the public benefits of the scheme outweigh any harm caused. Here are a couple of images just of the proposed landscaping between the north and south buildings. You can see here the greenery and the new pathways that are being provided. The buildings are orientated so that you look from East Road towards Thaxted Court. And then just the final few slides show them as kind of a wider site elevations. So this is from Murray Grove, showing both the north and west buildings and Thaxted Court. This is the East Road elevation showing the north and south buildings. And this is the final south-wide elevation showing the south building and west building. Overall, it is considered that the proposed development is of a high quality scheme providing residential units and 50% affordable housing. The wider landscaping scheme repairs the fractured landscape of the current estate for the benefit of existing and future residents. The scheme has been recommended for approval.
Thank you, Louise. Did you intend to tell us about the addendum?
I can do, yeah. So there are a few changes.
Read it into the minutes, that'd be good.
Yeah, so there are a few changes in the addendum. A miscount of the car parks originally. So there are 35 existing car parks on site and the 2 blue badges. They won't be provided in their entirety. Only 26 are being re-provided. And then there is a discussion about the basketball court on the roof of the existing car park building, which isn't being re-provided in the scheme.
Thank you. Okay, over to you, Chris, then, please. Nice to see you back. Yeah, so quick.
Thank you, Chair.
I've got one question to ask you before you go on, and that is, we've only got one objector. Could you tell us, please, is that your expectation? Because you know, we've lost apparently the original sort of application. Is that your expectation that there's only be one objector or not?
Probably one for planning colleagues to come in, Chair, but I think
they don't know.
This in my presentation to Leslie.
I can come in here, Chair, if that's helpful.
If you could.
So this is an application that has been resubmitted. So we've carried out reconsultation. Would have been you know, a number of letters sent out. So we expect the details of the objections in the report are as we kind of expect, and all the notifications around the meeting have been sent out as normal.
Okay, I was just asking Chris if that's his expectation. When you've consulted people, can you recall, was there much objection? No. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Over to you. Sorry to disrupt you.
That's okay, Chair, and thank you for the welcome. I'm always pleased to be here presenting our new developments. I'm really pleased to be here tonight, introducing this exciting project, which I hope will transform a prominent site at the junction of Murray Grove and New North Road. This application is one of 16 projects in the Council's housing supply programme, which is intended to provide much needed additional affordable housing on brownfield sites on existing housing estates. The HSP is currently on track to deliver around 700 new homes, of which at least half will be genuinely affordable council rent and shared ownership. This is also the third project coming forward in the Hoxton West ward, and collectively they will provide nearly 200 much needed new homes, 60% of them affordable. All of these homes will be developed and managed by the council or resident-led organisations. So, as the case officer has said, this development will provide 73 new homes, of which 28, nearly 40%, will be for social rent and 9 outright sale homes. We think it's right that local people should benefit first and foremost from this development and all council-led developments. So that's why existing council tenants living on Fairbank and Provost estates, whose existing homes are unsuitable, will be at the front of the queue to get one of these new social rented homes through our local lettings policy. And furthermore, residents of all ages will be able to identify and enjoy significantly improved public realm, including high quality landscaping with new play spaces and 56 trees planted. Importantly, the entrances to Thaxted Court and Housted Court will no longer be neglected, and existing residents will benefit from improved access routes to their homes and better refuse arrangements. This proposal's been developed over 3 years, working really closely with local people and planning colleagues. During that time, we've held 3 public exhibitions, both physically and virtually. We've knocked on every door in the nearby blocks to talk to residents about the plans, and we've kept more than 400 households informed through regular newsletters. And I hope, Chair, that explains why we only have 1 objection to the proposal tonight, because we really have been through an extensive consultation process. That has helped to shape these final proposals. We have redistributed the massing of the blocks to reduce the impact on existing properties while delivering the same number of much needed new homes. We have also significantly revisited the landscaping proposals to meet residents' aspirations for that space, as well as providing a community room where local people can meet once the pandemic has passed. I'm not going to say any more. Thank you very much for listening, but just to flag that the project team is on hand and we'll be happy to answer any questions from the subcommittee. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, I'll start. Katie, do you have any questions at all?
I was going to raise the same question as you, Chair, about consultation and objections. My only other question for the applicant is, are the architects going to be retained? This was something the Hackney Society particularly.
Thank you, Chair. Just for the delay in picking my mic on, we very much hope and intend that the architects will be taken on by the contractor going forward. We don't absolutely require that, but we strongly encourage it through the tendering process.
Is there any way it can be required?
It could be required contractually, but I'm not sure how that would be achieved through a planning mechanism. Just to give the assurance to the committee, though, we have got a really strong track record in achieving this. So whenever we've wanted the architect to be taken on by the contractor, that has happened in the past.
Okay, let's come back to that, Katie. Thank you. Claire. Sorry, Claire Joseph.
Which Claire?
Okay, Claire Joseph. Sorry, it's too.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes,
okay. Hi. Oh, sorry. Yes, thanks very much for that. I've been having a good look at it. I mean, I like it on the whole, but I mean, it does say it's going to be tenure blind, but I see there's a north building and a south building, and our social housing's in the north building. So is that building actually facing north, or is it just north of the tower that we're building around it? Because if it's facing north, then it is a lot less desirable, I would say, in terms of light, sunlight and warmth, and for people on the balcony. So why have we decided to put all our social housing in the north? And just on that theme of social housing, I note that, and then there is a good amount, but 10 of them are only 1 bedroom. And that's not really in demand. So maybe you could talk a little bit to that. Thank you.
That's for Chris then. 2 questions for Chris.
Yes, please.
Chair, with your agreement, could I pick up the second question, and then I'll bring in Luke McDonald from Lynch Architects to talk about
Yes.
why we have a north, south, and west building and the logic around that. So in terms of tenure, Councillor Joseph, we're providing a real mix here, and one of the things we've done is sorry, just wait for Councillor Joseph to come back in. I'll start again. So we do have this mix. We have a mixture of 10 1-beds, 8 2-beds, and importantly 10 3-bed family homes. So it's a real mix. Actually, it reflects the level of housing need on the Fairbank estate and the adjacent Provost estate. So we're really confident that all of those social rent homes would be let to people in housing need on the immediately adjacent estates. So it is actually it's a deliberate attempt to meet local housing need, and with a mixed mix of properties, if you like. If that answers your question, could I bring in? We really do have 3 10-year blind blocks and the quality of design that goes into that.
Yeah, sure. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi. It really is just a kind of naming convention. Each of the buildings which are proposed has 4 dual aspect units, or the West building has 2 dual aspect units. So the apartments which are placed into the North block have an aspect either east, west, north, or south, which is exactly the same as the South building. The actual separation distance between the buildings is greatest to the north. So actually the experience of daylight levels within the dwellings itself is strongest to the northern block. I think it's fair to say that the scheme achieves excellent daylight and sunlight levels within the scheme, which has been thoroughly tested and submitted as part of this application. And yes, each of the units is dual aspect with a corner balcony with a dual aspect living room which faces into 2 directions.
Thank you. Okay, Peter, please. Peter Snell. And then I'll go to Michael.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, basically, you stroke Katie picked up my concerns, and then Katie also picked up my issue about picking up what Hackney Society said. I mean, to complement this, and perhaps in summing up we can cover it. I am impressed with this level of engagement, and we approve these great grand schemes, but I mean, just to complement Chris and his team. This idea that we can engage so actively and effectively, I can see clear benefits here, but they need a lot of explaining to people. So it seems to me you've done very well. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael, and then I'll come to Steve.
Chair, I'm just looking through the parking issues, and perhaps you can move on to Steve, and I'll formulate a question that's sort of bubbling in my mind if it needs to be aired or not. And
okay, you don't need to ask any questions, Michael. Steve, if you.
No, I think it's a really well designed couple of buildings. I think they look great, and it's great to see so much social housing being delivered in these 2. I just wanted to ask around the retail units and plans around those. Are there any specific uses that are being planned? I know that in some of the buildings on some other Hackney sites there have been, for example, under the Anthology building that was assigned for community use. It lays empty still after a couple of years now of being available. So I just wondered if you could set out what your views are on those residential.
Chris.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the kind words, Councillor Race. In terms of the ground floor uses, we have a mixture. So we have a community room which is inward facing to the estate, and we have retail space or commercial space which is outward facing. So we try to keep that as flexible as possible. I'm just going to ask Claudia Lynch, if I can, from Lynch Architects, to come in to give you some assurance around the range of uses that could be used in those non-residential spaces. Claudia, you're able to share with that?
So yeah, what do you mean by residential spaces? You mean the commercial?
Sorry, I said residential. I meant retail spaces.
Yeah, retail spaces, yeah. Well, we've, as Chris said, the 2 commercial spaces are facing the street, so they are facing the public, and they are kept flexible on purpose because they won't be available for another 3 to 4 years. But the planning application keeps that, allows that flexibility. And we have another space which is in the south building, which is further back inside where it's quieter, and this is allocated as a workspace unit. But again, it has flexibility, and they could be either or. And then the smaller room facing the center of the site is allocated for use by residents. But again, it's all flexible at the moment in terms of use. The only thing that's not possible is a food outlet with, where food is cooked on site, because there is no extract system. So that would be.
Okay. Chair, could I just ask a quick follow-up?
Yes, go on, please.
Thank you. So will there be any resident engagement involvement in the tenancies for those commercial units, or are they going to be solely commercial to the highest bidder, whomever wants to take it within that use class?
Thank you, Councillor Race. Chair, shall I take that? And
yes,
at the moment, this is not set in stone. As Claudia said, we've ruled out food uses, hot food uses. The intention is that these are commercially let, so that they generate an income for the council. They are smaller units, so we expect them to have to be appropriate for local uses. We will be engaging with local members on the subject. One of the things that ward members have been very keen to ensure is that we have things like a cash point provided for as some benefits local residents. So there's more work to do on this, I think, is my response to that, Councillor Race.
Okay, thank you. Michael.
Yes, I'm just wondering about the blue badge provision. There's currently 2 places designated on Thaxted, and I suspect those are going to be reintroduced along the 3 blocks. But I just wondered whether they'll be sited sufficiently centrally to allow those disabled residents to access their homes within the 50-meter criteria for eligibility for a blue badge holder. If they're beyond that, it would make life difficult for them. I just wonder where they're going to be located, and whether 2 is in fact sufficient.
Joe,
there were 2 before, but whether they're, in terms of they've got 3 blocks now, we've got more, whether that's going to be sufficient provision. Thanks.
Well, I think I'm more than happy to sort of start and formulate an answer to that, Councillor Levy, and thank you for the question. In terms of the actual specific location of those, my understanding is that they will definitely be in close proximity to residences, and I would anticipate that should be the 50-meter specification. So, as you mentioned, sorry, there are.
Sorry, could we condition that? Because otherwise, we lose the benefit. Well, the residents would lose the benefit of.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt. So just to say, this was sort of part of the answer that I would explain. So, and Louise can perhaps contribute as well. But my understanding is that a car parking management plan has been conditioned and must be submitted. Louise, is that correct?
Yes, we have got a parking management plan for the blue badge spaces. Did you want me to provide a little bit more about the number that we've gone with?
Yes.
I'll just very briefly finish what I was going to say, because I'm worried, Louise, I'll keep interrupting you. So just to finish off the point I was going to make, so it's 2 spaces for residential dwellings. The management plan must be submitted, and then crucially, the applicant must identify another 7% of provision that could be provided. And that's really crucial in ensuring that, as you've pointed out, it's not just the 2 spaces, there must be those additional ones. There's also an additional space provided for the commercial space. So yeah, we very much considered it, and I'll let Louise sort of expand on that.
Sorry, just to interject, that provision, will that be ring fenced? In other words, it can't be used for any other purpose, but as if the demand is there, we have identified a specific area which will be used, or is it just a potluck, which hopefully there'll be presented stuff? I'd rather see that, actually enshrined to ensure that there is there is a space to do this once the demand is identified.
So that's certainly my understanding, that 7% of provision must be identified on the car parking management plan, and that car parking management plan is definitely conditioned. But I almost am certain that Louise will know more than I than I do, or have a sort of more a clear explanation.
Excellent, thank you so much.
Yes, so you're right. We have re-provided those 2 that were on the site at the moment, and then, as Joe said, there's an additional 1 for the commercial units, and then we don't have any more than that at the moment, but we do have that parking management plan that says that 7% additional 7% of the units could have blue badge spaces in the future if they're required. So we will require in the car parking management plan that it's shown how those ones could be changed over in the future if they were needed.
Okay, thank you. And
thank you for that comprehensive response. And I wanted to thank you for the presentation. I look forward to seeing it up. Actually, it looks an excellent development, and I'm sure the residents, when they move back, will enjoy the new vistas that this provides. Thank you very much again.
Thank you, Michael. Claire, number 2. We can see you and hear you, I think, Claire. Now.
Yes, I am. I'm back, it seems. Thank you, Chair. I'd also like to congratulate the team on the amount of social rent as well, and also the level of engagement, and also the use of the local lettings policy, which also might help to explain why residents are much more positive about the scheme. I wondered whether you'd be able to talk about the environmental impact. I know that's quite broad, so it's quite a broad question, really, in terms of the building design and also the materials you are proposing to use.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. Thank you, Chair. Would you be happy that I asked the architect, Luke McDonald, to talk through that? He'll be very enthusiastic to explain all the environmental credentials of this proposal.
Yeah, so if I just briefly talk about the actual structure of the building and the materials that we're proposing, both for the structure and then also for the facade. This development actually sits on top of 2 Network Rail tunnels, which has a large impact on the structure that was proposed. The design team considered multiple options for the frame of the building, and finally settled on a lightweight concrete frame, which uses a recycled lightweight aggregate instead of typical stone aggregate. So it's up to 30% lighter to avoid overloading the tunnels in order to achieve this level of housing. The actual structure forms a vital component of the passive environmental strategy for the residential accommodation that we're proposing. The concrete is to be partially exposed within the residential units, making use of its inherent thermal mass capacity for storing heat and dealing with overheating in the warmer summer months and the projection of rising temperatures. This allows all of the residential units on the site to be naturally ventilated and passively ventilated without reliance on mechanical cooling in order to deal with the TM59 calculations for the overheating of the project. In addition, we're proposing that windows have in their adjacency an acoustic ventilation panel which occupants can leave open at night, which allows for fresh air to enter the building without hindering the occupants at nighttime with excess noise. This allows the heat that's stored in the concrete to actually disperse from the building through passive means, thereby cooling the building and maintaining cooler temperatures during the summer months, which enable the natural ventilation to work. So that's the kind of logic for the structure of the building, which is absolutely integral to the environmental strategy for the building. Claudia, do you want to talk a little bit about the actual mechanical systems that we have for providing hot water to the residents and electricity, etc.?
Yeah. Well, we have, I mean, firstly, before we get into the systems, which are very energy efficient, we have used a number of passive means to reduce energy usage, and that is firstly the form and the orientation of the building and the design of the facades, which provides shadow overshadowing of windows so that solar gain is reduced or mitigated against. The use of the concrete that Luke mentioned also helps to mitigate overheating because the heat is absorbed by the thermal mass of the concrete. The window sizes have been very sort of optimized in order to reduce overheating, but optimize natural light in all the rooms and natural ventilation, of course. The envelope of the building is also designed to be very highly insulated, and we have triple glazing throughout, so the need for heating will be very low. The heating itself is provided by high efficiency underfloor heating in all apartments for over 10 years, and is provided by a communal air source heat pump, which extracts the heat from the air rather than from fossil fuels. And it's provided via a site-wide low temperature heat network. The other thing I could mention is that we also have rooftop photovoltaic panels to provide renewable electricity. And we have green-blue roofs, which provide biodiversity, but also collect rainwater and store it. And if I can say anything else about the landscape is designed with a very sophisticated, sustainable urban drainage strategy. So the majority of the paved areas are permeable, so water goes directly into the ground rather than into the pipe network. And then the planted areas that you saw on the site plan are actual rain gardens, so they collect water from the other areas and store them and use them to water the plants, and at the same time to reduce water going into the drainage network.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Blue roof. So blue roof is rainwater collection, is it?
Yeah. So it's a combination. It's called blue-green because it's planted, but it has in the build-up it has a certain capacity to hold water, and only when there is a massive rainstorm that water then needs to get radiated to an overflow. But otherwise, the water is just kept on the roof until.
Is that novel? Is it? Is that a novel?
It's not novel. It's been used. It's not dangerous because it's not so novel.
I've never seen a blue roof before.
Yeah, they call it blue-green roof.
Okay, thank you. Okay, can I ask?
Is it okay to ask?
Yes, Claire.
On the back of that, just to ask, it's really good to hear all of the detail. How far are we off from kind of from this building being kind of zero carbon in a measurable sense?
I can answer. Sorry, I can just answer that one quickly if you want. There is a carbon offset contribution because it's not entirely at carbon at the level it should, that we would want to achieve. So it's I think it's a 25-ton offset, which works out at about £70,000, which is reasonably low for a scheme like this.
Okay. While we're on that, how tall is the building, Luke?
So the buildings are all below 30 metres in height. So they're all ground plus 7 upper stories.
Okay, so it couldn't be a timber building then.
The concrete, the lightweight concrete solution that we adopted was one that kind of saw us through the various environmental strategies that we were trying to balance in terms of the overheating, the daylight and sunlight levels, the fire compartment between floors, the acoustic separation between floors and uses. So it's the one that best suited the considerations that we had to deal with.
Okay, thank you. Right, can I ask a few questions then? Louisa, 6, 10, 20, the paragraph about vertical sky component. I don't quite get it. The last line, the last sentence says, given these would all retain a figure above 12. What's that mean? Can't hear you. You're muted.
Can't hear me. Sorry, I just realised.
Can now.
Okay. So I think that the figure of when I've said above 12, what I'm trying to say there is that while there might be some noticeable impact, it's a kind of standard figure that is something in the teens for a dense urban environment usually provides a good level of light. So my argument there was saying that they will all have figures in the teens, and therefore it should still provide a good level of light.
Okay. I thought vertical sky component, you talk about 12, I thought it was a drop of 25% or something.
Oh, yes, it is. So you've got the first couple of tests that are less than 27 or 80% of the former value, but we consider that for a scheme like this, and kind of what is the centre of Hoxton, you'd often find that those kind of absolute figures are what you might expect in a more suburban environment. And so while it doesn't meet the original tests, it is still considered to provide a good quality of light.
Okay, so the 12 should say 12%, should it?
No, it's a set figure of 12. So the 27 is the very high level, but then it's figures, not percent figures, but figures between in the teens up to 27 that still provide a good quality of light.
Okay, thank you. 13 Murrah Grove is described as forming a mirror, so it's right close to. Could you explain?
You're very quiet, Vincent.
Say again?
You're a bit quiet, Vincent.
Oh, am I? Sorry. I don't know quite what I can do. Is this okay?
That's much better.
Okay. So where you described 13 Murrah Grove as a mirror to the building, I didn't quite see that in your footprint drawing.
Okay.
Could you point out? Could you put that back up again, please?
Yes, sure. Sorry, I've got a lot of pages open. Let me see which one is the slides. Oh, sorry. Okay, here it is. Okay, can you see me scrolling through my presentation now?
Yes.
Okay. I think the best image is probably going to be this one here. Okay. So this is the west building where I've got the label, and then yes. 13 Murrah Grove is the building to the west.
Yes.
So what I've meant by kind of a mirror is that, so this is Ellerton Street that runs down to Provost Estate behind.
Okay.
And 13 Murray Grove got built right up to the corner, and we're building the west building is kind of a mirror image.
I understand it, thank you. Joe, I always talk about cycle parking. Providing two-tier cycle parking is rubbish, whether it's in the London design standards or not, because you hit your head on these things, or it's difficult to put them up. Can we do anything more to get a decent design standard that we can work to? That's about ground floor normal cycle stands, or are you going to keep coming back to me and every time and saying we're going to have two-tier cycling?
Well, I think so firstly, as you've reflected, this is a sort of question and an issue that has come up a number of times, and certainly, not to overdo it, but it is genuinely a concern for me as a transport officer, because I think everyone's quite sort of proud of Hackney in terms of we have very high cycle parking standards for developments in terms of the volume of cycle parking spaces, but to sort of repeatedly have a concern that we're not providing an appropriate provision, and that you've raised that repeatedly, is certainly a concern. On this application, you've mentioned the LCDS guidance, and obviously we have stipulated to the applicant we would require that. That includes appropriate spacing requirements and also automated assistance technology to be used for those two-tier cycle spaces. We've then conditioned a cycle parking plan that must be submitted to us. And I did have quite an extensive conversation with Louise and also Louise's manager as well, about anything else we could do in this instance. So in the addendum, we've added an informative that states that the applicant must commit to installing the maximum number of single tier cycle parking spaces. So that's for this application. I think the only other thing to say in addition is that I will, I'm sort of in the process of writing a paper on our policy position. And I think, you know, we'll get different voices within the council and possibly other stakeholders, an academic perspective, maybe get stakeholders like LCC to give their opinion on two-tier, because I massively understand it's a concern to you. I think we have really struck quite a good compromise in this instance, but obviously I don't want it to be an ongoing concern.
Okay, thank you. I can see Steve wants to come in, but I'll finish. So Luciana, we like the materials.
Hi, Chair. Joris is the case officer for this one, but yes, we are very satisfied with the materials. But I think he can expand a little bit more.
Joris, you like the material?
Hi, thank you. Yes, we do think that they would be suitably high quality materials. We have the Peterson bricks and glass reinforced concrete, which is smoother than the regular concrete and has the appropriate detailing to prevent staining. So yeah, throughout the scheme, high quality materials have been used.
Thank you. I'll ask you first and then I'll ask the architect. These colonnades, what's that all about?
I believe it's partly to provide a level of frontage towards the road, because the existing building has a very large setback. And it's also used to unify the west building and the north building, sort of tying the estate together, because it uses the same concrete panels throughout, and it just adds a bit of interest, seating opportunities, and like I said, some frontage.
Did the design review panel get a look at this at all?
Yes, they have, and they were also supportive.
Luke, what are you trying to achieve with this colonnade?
I think the colonnades serve multiple functions. That currently the kind of pedestrian experience along East Road is quite harsh. You're quite exposed to the road. And so the colonnade, which is placed at the ground of the south building, which faces east, allows for a more pleasurable route kind of away from the busier kind of traffic. It's a continuation of the tree line, which continues, that we've proposed to continue along the street. The colonnade that is proposed to the north along Murray Grove, I think, as Louise said in her presentation, unifies the west building and the north building and provides an edge to the estate, which is currently kind of fractured at the moment by the sunken car park. Beyond that, it also serves a number of functions. So it conceals some visitor cycle parking. It disguises a level change in the site. It provides some space for impromptu play. It provides a bus stop. It provides a visual screen to the car parking, which is being re-provided on site. And it also provides somewhere for somebody to kind of meander along the street, kind of away from the pavement edge and amongst the kind of landscaping, which is immediately to the south of the colonnade, Murray Grove.
Chris, are you committed to this?
We are, Chair, and not without some stress testing. So this is one of the things that we have discussed with residents at length, and it's been through quite a few iterations to get to this. But we do think it adds value to the overall composition, and therefore we're supportive of it.
Okay. The answer to Katie's architecture issue is that if we can justify why we should retain an architect, then we sometimes write it in. I guess, Luciana, is there anything in this that would encourage us to do that? Is it a particular scheme that would require such a requirement? We can write it in as a legal requirement if we think we can justify it.
From my discussions with my colleagues, Chair, we haven't really found there was a particular reason in this case. There are cases where there are exceptional circumstances, let's say where you have, a listed building or some very exceptionally complicated method of construction, or where the concept is very, it's exceptionally complicated that it actually requires the architect to be retained. I don't think this is the case. I wouldn't have an objection to it, but I'm not entirely sure it would actually comply with the tests and actually be justified in this case. Perhaps Louise, I don't know if Louise wants to.
So Katie, I think that's your answer.
That's fine, Chair, thank you.
We hope for the best and hope the architect will be retained. We'd like to see that. I think I've asked all my questions. Is there any? I think Steve, you wanted to, did you? Steve,
yes,
and then Peter.
Please, Chair. Thank you. Chair, it's probably a two-part question. The first part is around that proposed further discussion on cycling and the storage with Joe. I wondered whether we might be able to include in that ways in which we can improve security generally on sites for cycling. I think, I've mentioned it a couple of times previously, if you walk around Hackney, most balconies now have bicycles on them because nobody stores them in the actual bicycle stores, either on the ground floor or the basement, because it takes one person getting in to lose all of your bicycles. And I've lost 4 in that way in Hackney over the last few years. So, I mean, it's a case of trying to keep ahead of criminals, obviously, but it would be useful, I think, to have a conversation about how we can kind of try our best to design a way that problem for residents of all buildings. And I just wondered, in terms of this particular development, what thought has been put towards the security of those bicycle storage areas in the basement and the ground floors.
Joe, that's for you to comment on and respond to.
Yeah, so thank you very much for the question, Councillor Race, or the first question. I think potentially Louise and Chris may be more knowledgeable about the actual specifics of this development. I completely agree with the sort of crux of the question, and obviously we have one of the most successful cycle hanger schemes, which obviously we offer for on-street and estate residents. And it remains a challenge with the cycle hanger scheme as well. But obviously, we're keen to put the most secure technology on the ground. But also, there is a balance that we have to strike with cost and concerns. So I'd be more than happy to have a sort of offline discussion with you about anything that we can put into conditions. I would just stress we do emphasise about that London Cycle Design Standards, which is obviously very much focused on provision of security and ensuring things like cycle parking is well overlooked and monitored. And we do condition that we will then review the cycle parking plan. So if there's anything obvious in terms of security, then obviously we wouldn't discharge that condition. But as I say, I'm more than happy to sort of continue the conversation with you to get that moving.
Chris, you do a lot of this stuff. Is there any learning happening within your department about bicycle theft?
I mean, I am with Councillor Race on this. We have a strong specification for cycle storage, and yet that still doesn't always defeat the criminals. So we are in learning mode. Chair, I'm happy that we asked Luke, the project architect, to walk you through the steps we are taking to design in secure cycle storage.
Hi.
Okay, go on then, Luke.
Hi. Yeah, just to say that the scheme that is kind of put in front of you is the result of consultation as well with both Secure by Design and the police, who we've met on a number of occasions to deal with kind of airlocks and various access control points in order to get to the cycle stores. The cycle stores are not directly visible from the street, so we've taken care to make sure that they're not immediately obvious where they are. You need access control in order to get through the first door, and then access control in order to get through the second door. And then once you're in the cycle storage, there are locks that are capable of being stands rather that are capable of being locked in two places. And of course, it'll be monitored by the CCTV system, which is installed in the building.
Okay, thank you. My response to you, Steve, is buy yourself a pub bike and a kryptonite lock.
My £90 lock I have on video was cut through by a handheld angle grinder in about 6 seconds, Vincent. Okay. Outside the front of the town hall, as you might remember.
Was the bike worth stealing?
It really was, yes, after having only owned it for 24 hours.
That's the problem. New bike. Okay, one more, Claire and I think Peter. Claire?
Thank you, Chair. I've got a couple, but I'll be very quick. Is that okay?
Yes.
The first is I'm really, really pleased to see balconies. I think everything that gets built should have a balcony. We've got so little recreational space for people. But do the rooms in this development that have balconies, I presume they have French windows? I'm just wondering, do those rooms also have a regular window? Because French windows or doors can be a bit of a problem when you want to your flat and winter. You can have to sit in quite a cold room to get some ventilation to avoid damp. So I'm just wondering, do all the rooms have at least one window for ventilation as well as doors? That's my first one. The second one is I did note in the report that it falls short of designated play space, and I think we did touch on that earlier. And that is a bit of a problem when we are densifying and infilling our estates to the extent that we are. Recreational space is really important. And I know the report says, Shoreditch Park is just around the corner, but it is already very, very well used, that park. And I think there was a mention of some stage and some rope play for children, but I'm just wondering what provision can we give here in terms of playground space for children? I think it is quite important. And then finally, just a quick one for Chris. obviously we are doing a lot of infill across the borough. I'm just wondering, how long is this project likely to take? It is very stressful for people living. I mean, it might not strictly be a planning question, but it's very stressful to live in a building site for years at a time. And I'm just thinking, if we can think a little bit about what kind of stress relieving tactics or programs we can offer to people. What kind of hours of operation are we talking about in terms of building management? I think it's very important, particularly when lots of people are working from home and maybe surrounded by a building site for many hours a day. Okay, I'll leave it at that.
I don't mind us asking council applicants non-planning matters. So Luke, is that you, two of yours, and then one for Chris?
Yeah, if I just touch on the balconies, and Claudia can pick up on the play space. Yes, the balconies are not the only source of ventilation to the living rooms. The balconies are always placed on the corners, and they always serve the living room. But there is always an additional window which can be used, so you don't have to rely on the glazing to the balcony or the doors to the balcony to get the ventilation.
Thank you, Claudia.
So we have actually got dedicated playscape space on the site. So we have two types: a formal type of play space, and it includes the rope play that I mentioned, and also a table tennis table for children sort of mid-age 7 to 11 or older. And we also have a doorstep play for smaller children, which is to the south of Thaxted Court. So this is the most quiet and sunniest part of the site, and it also includes general seating, so parents or grandparents can sit around the play space, which includes climbing slides and also a basket swing, which is usable by all ages. And apart from this, we have in the landscape indicated various areas which are called playable. So there's a little bridge across one of the rain gardens where one can balance or climb along, and there is a little glade of trees with little children-sized furniture. So there are these things dotted around which enable very different types of play. And if you add it all up, we had to measure it obviously for the application, and that all comes to 460 square meters of play space or playable space.
So you've done what you can, that's what you're saying. And if the parking is redefined, redesignated, play is one possibility, I guess, Chris.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to come in on that, Chair, before I pick up Councillor Joseph's other point. So it's worth saying that this is a tight site. Clearly, it's a dense part of the borough. The quality of the existing open space provision is absolutely rubbish at the moment, and the historic play space on top of the car park has been shut for many years and was just asphalt deck. So the quality of what we put back will be hugely improved. I think that's important to say. And the other thing to say is that we've probably sold ourselves slightly short in this presentation of the scale of the ambition and the engineering endeavour around this. So not only are we building over 2 network rail tunnels, we're also trying to address, and you might recall from Louise's photos, Thaxted Court just sits in a big hole in the ground, and that's really rubbish for the people that live there, because it means the car parking is at lower level, the access across the site just doesn't work. So we're looking to bring all that space back up to ground floor level, be hugely improved. Councillor Joseph, this is a complicated project, and we will be on site. It's really important that we choose the right contractor, that contractor has a construction management plan in place, which is a requirement on them, and a requirement they work really closely with the residents to develop that plan so that we can make sure people can get to and from their homes safely, refuse and emergency vehicles can get in and out during construction. And we have engaged some specialist advice to make sure that all those pieces of the jigsaw can be held together while this is put in place. So I completely accept your point. development next to someone's home is a challenge, and that's one of the reasons we have the local lettings policy. So it benefits local people, and we were really keen that the landscaping we deliver here is for everyone on Fairbank Estate. It's not just for residents of the new blocks. So it will be disruptive. I can't disguise that. I would say that the transformation of the site before and after will be immense, and I think of benefit to everyone that lives there.
Peter, you're the last person, I think.
Thank you, Chair. The first is just to understand something. People keep talking about these tunnels going underneath, and I'm trying to work out which ones they are. So just out of interest.
Non-planning question.
Yeah, I know it's a non-planning question, but we're allowed to take an interest in where we live. The things that I wanted to raise, which are, I think, planning issues and implementation issues, are number one, Steve's raises concerns about cycling are absolutely relevant, and they're relevant across tenures, not just council developed sites. I mean, there's a site in my ward, it seems as soon as we open a cycle parking area, then local criminals try and break into them. So can we please have an officer group of, with planning committee members set up for anyone who's interested to get involved in that? And that leads on to the second point that I want to make is I think part of the problem may be that when people think they're in a safe, secure area, they don't put the level of protection on their bikes. That, you know, mine's been parked outside for the last 10 years or something, and I put proper protection. So can we? Yeah, I've had one person with an angle grinder. Fortunately, somebody across the street opened the door and shouted at them, and they left after not doing it very well in the first instance. So Steve, great idea. Please work with Natalie. I'd love to be involved in that group because I think it's about both our design standards, but it's also about advice to people using those. And this is where I want to come to another issue. I mean, well done, you architects. You've really presented a positive case for this development. The blocks I once represented when I was a Devovoir councillor, my God, the environmental standards were crap. And this is fantastic. And you did a really good explanation of the use of lightweight concrete and everything else. The only thing I would ask quickly, and you know, Chris can come back, but it's a point that I'm just happy to leave in the ether. A well-run block needs understanding of the residents, and all that stuff you talked about passive ventilation and everything else is it only works if I've been around lots of novel blocks in my time where and taken around by the architects where they just weren't being run right because the people didn't understand how they
housing management here.
Yeah, I know.
We've got one question that I'll let you ask, and that's these tunnels. What are these tunnels?
Tolerate me, Vincent. So Chris, just you've got the tenants and the residents on board already. Can we just have some assurance on how they're going to be involved in making sure that these
You won't be handing over the building. Yes.
Chair, shall I answer briefly? Modern buildings are like modern cars. They are really, really complicated, and they require a very thorough handover process. And we work really, really closely with our housing. So from construction into housing management starts about 18 months before completion. We make sure there's a full operation and maintenance manual handed across. We run demonstration events for all the people looking after all aspects of the building, and we make sure that residents across all tenures are fully guided through the kit, what they can use themselves and what we do to look after the building. It's work in progress, but it's very necessary work.
Thank you. Luke, what are these tunnels?
So they're not TfL tunnels, they're actually Network Rail tunnels, and they go from Moorgate, Old Street, and then link up to Essex Road and then northwards from there.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Okay, that's it. I think we know what we're about. So we've got, don't even know what the recommendation is. I haven't got the right bit of paper. But how we're going to do is we're going to vote. When I call for people to vote, please put your hand up and hold it up, or keep it down, and then we will go quickly around people and they'll have to tell us how they are voting. So I'm asking the recommendation, I presume it's like we usually have, recommendation to approve, subject to a unilateral undertaking with the council, because we can't do it.
Chair, sorry to interject. I have the paper in front of me. I can read out the recommendation.
Oh, go on
Okay,
then.
the recommendation is as follows. Grant planning permission subject to conditions and completion of unilateral undertaking.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, all those in favour, please show. Okay, that's me. Claire, please. Claire, if you tell us whether you're in favour or not.
You'll have to say which Claire, Vincent.
Oh, Claire Potter.
Yes, in favour.
Okay, Peter Snell.
In favour.
Steve Race.
Agreed, Chair.
Mike Levy.
Agreed.
Katie.
In favour.
Claire. Joseph.
Sorry, it's not. In favour.
Thank you. And
In favour. Can you hear me?
Yes, that's all of us. Thank you very much indeed. And thank you. I look forward. It's fantastic filling that hole in. Yes, we didn't say that. We've taken it for granted. And it's fantastic doing away with those horrible 76 parking spaces and getting 73 flats out of it. What more could you want in terms of sustainability? So thank you very much indeed. It's 1946. We'll come back at 1956 and start promptly. Thank you very much.
I think while everybody is taking a break, I'm just going to
when we talk about passive surveillance, don't we?
Well, the members have turned up. Where's the officers?
I'm here.
Alex is here. We can start then. We've got Alex.
Yep.
We've got our legal officer.
Yep. Are you happy for me to start,
No,
Chair?
1 minute. We need Natalie, I think. There she
there
is.
she is.
Yeah, they're all appearing. Okay, Luciana is here. Joe is here. Neil Cleary.
Well, I've seen Neil did join the meeting.
Yeah, evening, I'm here. Hiya.
I've noticed that Councillor Joseph hasn't rejoined us. So I think we might want to give another minute, Chair.
Okay.
Edward. Okay, you're speaking, Edward. Right, Edward, you've seen what we do. We'll hear from the officers and then from you guys, and then we'll ask some questions.
So, Chair, just to clarify, if we are now starting and Councillor Joseph isn't rejoining us, then obviously she will not be able to participate in the discussion or the vote.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, we'll get started. So over to you, please, Alex, and yeah, Claire. Joseph is out of this one. Please, Alex.
Okay. Okay. If everyone can just let me know if they can see the slides.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So the application is for the redevelopment of an irregular shaped parcel of land at 91 Barrett Grove, which is located on the southern side, west of Stoke Newington Road. It should be noted.
Claire's here, so can you just restart again?
Oh, yep, sure. Okay.
Claire, you're now here, yeah? Okay.
Okay, so to start again, the application is for the redevelopment of a regular shaped parcel of land at 91 Barrett's Grove, which is located on the southern side of Barrett's Grove, west of Stoke Newington Road, and will provide residential accommodation. So just it should be noted, following the publication of the committee papers, an additional comment was received from the Dalston Conservation Area Advisory Committee, which generally supported the scheme but raised concerns with the mix of brick colours and finishes. However, it should be noted that the materiality of the scheme has not been amended to the previous iteration, which was approved at committee last year, which I'll go into. There was also the carbon contribution was updated in the section 106 section because that was incorrectly written down, and best endeavours cycle parking informative was included on the. Okay, so the site currently contains a vacant MOT garage equivalent to 2 stories in height and an open yard to the west of the building, which has informally been used as car parking. It's located within a predominantly residential context to the west and commercial and retail uses to the east along Stoke Newington Road. The site is located within the Dalston Conservation Area. So these photos just give you an idea of the context of the site. And the top left shows the view from Barrett's Grove looking east towards a modern flatted development, which fronts Stoke Newington Road. The bottom left shows the site from Barrett's Grove looking west, where the site adjoins a line of terrace houses. The top right shows the view of the site from the rear access from Pellerin Road, and the bottom right shows the view of the locally listed Princess May Primary School, which is directly opposite the site to the north. So these photos give an indication of this from within the site. So the top photos show the view from the site looking towards the rear of the properties to the west, which front Barrett's Grove. The bottom left shows the view of the site, which looks towards the rear of 37 to 47 Stoke Newington Road. And the bottom right shows the view from the site looking towards Pellerin Road. So the proposal provides 25 new residential developments within 3 blocks ranging in height from 4 to 6 stories. To facilitate the development, the existing garage will be demolished. The application is resubmission of a scheme which was presented at committee in February last year, which was unanimously recommended with a resolution to grant. The only major change proposed as part of the scheme is the provision of an extra 2 residential units and the removal of any B1 commercial floor space. It should be noted that the massing, detailing and layout of the scheme remains unchanged. As well as the provision of good quality affordable housing, the development provides an internal courtyard with a new playground, visitor bike parking and landscaping. In terms of tenure split, the proposal has been designed to be tenure blind and will deliver a mix of London affordable rent, shared ownership and units for market sale. The property will deliver 52% affordable housing, a total of 13 units, in line with London Plan and Hackney Local Plan policies. This provision is a marked improvement on the previous scheme, which proposed to deliver only 17% of the units as affordable housing. In regard to car parking, the proposal will provide 2 blue badge parking spaces on Barrett's Grove and will deliver 58 cycle storage spaces, a mixture of both long and short stay. So the scheme consists of 3 blocks, Block A, Block B and Block C, arranged around a landscape courtyard. Access is from both Barrett's Grove and Pellerin Road via a covered walkway between blocks A and B from Barrett's Grove and by the landscape courtyard from Pellerin Road. Block A is 6 stories, comprising 12 residential units. Block B is 4 stories, comprising 9 residential units. And Block C is the rear unit, which is 4 stories, comprising 4 family-sized affordable residential units. The flat roofs to both buildings will include green roofs and PV panels. The overall arrangement of cores and communal entrances is supported in design terms. The same design principles have been applied to each of the 3 blocks, so the scheme appears as a genuinely tenure blind development. All units meet the minimum standard for respective unit and room sizes, and all units are provided with outdoor amenity space. The removal of the B1 floor space, which is for this ground floor unit on Block A, results in the provision of 2 additional well-sized units. So this is just the elevation fronting Barrett's Grove, which shows that the massing is considered to be a suitable response to the site's surrounding context. The height and bulk of the 2 blocks fronting Barrett's Grove have been designed in a way that addresses the scale of the immediate neighbouring buildings and mitigates to an acceptable level any potential overshadowing and direct overlooking. As previously iterated, the massing of the scheme remains unchanged from the previous application and has already been considered acceptable in principle. The proposed ground floor residential units that front onto Barrett's Grove, blocks A and B, are designed with acceptable defensible space at the front and with the bedrooms positioned towards the internal courtyard. These entrances also assist in activating the street frontage and creating a strong domestic feel for the scheme. So the proposed architecture is based on a simple, calm language of brick elevation and rational rhythms of openings. The proposed to integrate well within the surrounding historic context, and it would assist in enhancing the character and appearance of this part of the Dostal Conservation Area, which includes buildings of various periods, scale and character. The proposal is considered respectful of the locally listed building to the north in terms of scale, character and materiality. Access is adequately marked with canopies which improve legibility and adds to the overall architectural quality of the scheme. The top floor metal cladding is beneficial in limiting the perceived bulk of the scheme and integrating it effectively with the existing street parapets. Overall, the proposal is considered to provide a high quality mixed tenure housing to meet the needs of local residents. The development delivers a high standard of design and residential accommodation that is sustainable and accessible and will not cause harm to the Dalston Conservation Area or the setting of the neighbouring locally listed Princess May Primary School. The development will not give rise to any significant off-site amenities or highway impacts and will deliver public benefit of updated landscaping. All other material considerations have been covered within the report, and therefore officers recommend that planning permission be granted subject to conditions and a legal agreement.
Thank you very much. Over to you, Edward. 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Edward Ledwidge. I'm a partner at Montague Evans. I represent the joint applicants for the application, SN Developments and Islington and Shoreditch Housing Association. I'm not sure really what else I can add to the officer's report, which is very clear and comprehensive. really just to say that the scheme presented tonight is identical really in terms of its design and appearance to that which was approved by the committee on the 5th of Feb last year. The only difference has been the switching out of the commercial space at ground floor, a small B1 unit with 2 additional flats, and that has enabled the housing association to enhance the affordable content of the scheme from 17% in terms of the previous approval to 52% in terms of this proposal. And the way that splits from a tenure perspective is sort of rounding up 62% in favour of rent and 38% shared ownership. So you can see that the key difference really in terms of it being a pure residential scheme has enabled a significant improvement to the affordable housing provision within the scheme. So really the only change in terms of the scheme that's in front of you tonight in appearance wise, and that which has been approved already, which is still a going concern, I mean it's just the section 106 hasn't been completed on it, is that the ground floor unit would be 2 additional flats rather than a commercial unit. So it's that kind of ground floor frontage onto the street, which is slightly different. I think the only thing really just to kind of emphasise, just kind of picking up on some comments on the previous application in terms of cycle storage and natural surveillance. I mean, the cycle storage is ample within the courtyard area. It's secure. It is overlooked. There's a combination of double stack units and stands to allow for those who perhaps aren't as able to manage the stacked units. And there's clearly a significant improvement to the quality of the appearance of the site, but also, you know, the introduction of that kind of play space and biodiversity improvements. So I think I'll probably leave it at that, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. If I could actually start and ask a couple of questions of Natalie, really. Natalie, what do we have to? What is the weight that we have to apply to the fact that we've made a decision before on this, essentially a previous decision on this?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, so members should be aware that, as Alex said, there has already been a resolution to grant permission on a very similar scheme. So it's similar to a situation we had back in September. So members need to be mindful they need to be consistent in decision making. Obviously, we're not kind of bound by previous decisions, but should be mindful that a decision has been made on, as I say, a very similar scheme to this one presented before members tonight.
Thank you. And are there any new policies associated with this in terms of our new plan? Perhaps Alex can answer that one.
Yeah, absolutely. The most pertinent policies would be probably LP 28. So this looks at industrial land space, floor space, sorry. But in regards to that, whilst I can say that LP 33 does seek to protect against a net loss of any floor space, the critical point of balance in this decision making lies with the potential for the proposal to secure 100% affordable housing provision across the site. So I might get Neil to go into this, but the proposal does seek 50%, which is a higher percentage than we would normally expect. But there is the opportunity for the Islington and Shoreditch Housing Association to purchase the site and provide 100% affordable housing. So under normal circumstances, we wouldn't expect to receive this level of genuinely affordable housing from any development proposal. So I guess the balance falls towards meeting this key policy objective, which is meeting the most significant area of housing need. So therefore, it felt that we can positively determine the proposal on this basis. That is, that it delivers a higher level policy objective, meeting a higher level of need. So in this case, it is considered that whilst that policy is relevant, the loss of the employment floor space is justified. And it's also noted that the site is currently vacant and hasn't been used for a number of years. And anecdotal evidence has suggested that small-scale industrial floor space in a residential area, the demand is quite low, and being in a predominantly residential area adjacent to a primary school, the site is considered better suited to a less environmentally impactful land use.
Thank you. And thirdly, so the change is, I understand that the ground floor that fronts onto Barrett's Grove,
yep.
I wonder if you can put up a drawing on that, is
Sure.
now housing rather than business. Is
Yes.
that right?
Yes. So if you can see where my cursor is here, it's these two here. I'll show you as well on the elevation. It's this ground floor frontage here.
Okay. And what is the boundary treatment then for that? Obviously, housing coming onto a pavement is different to a business coming onto a pavement.
Yes. So they have provided boundary fencing, and we have also requested conditions of this as part of condition 3 or within the report. So we'll get further details of this, but at the moment we considered that given that the bedrooms don't front onto Barrett's Grove, that there is adequate defensible space provided.
You said fencing. We normally talk about brick wall there, a small. What are you planning as your boundary treatment, applicant, please?
Yeah, so if you see the units to the right of the elevation, you'll see that you've got sort of 3 front doors there with some defensible space and boundary treatment. I mean, they're the approved units. So we'd seek to replicate that arrangement on the 2 new additional flats.
What is the approved?
So it's a combination of brick wall and landscaping. I think, you know, if further details of that are required by condition, I think that's what Alex is referring to.
Yeah, so it'll be brick wall and landscaping. Okay.
It's a consistent approach across that street frontage elevation.
Okay, lovely. Thank you. I think that's me done. Members, do you have any questions, please? Stick your hand up. I don't think there'll be many. Claire and, oh, crikey. Claire and then Michael.
Hello, yes, thank you for that. I do recognise that the affordable housing element has improved, but I mean, no social housing whatsoever from a housing association isn't very good, frankly. Why isn't there even one socially rented home?
Applicant?
Oh, okay. I can also provide a response.
You have a go at it then, Alex.
So there are 8 units for rent and 5 units shared ownership.
So there are. Is Claire there?
Chair, it looks as though she's dropped out again.
Yeah, she's coming back in.
So that kind of exceeds the target 60-40. It's more like 62-38.
So these are London rent, aren't they?
Yeah, it's a combination.
Yes, yeah. So looking at the London affordable rent, it does provide genuinely affordable housing at rents only slightly higher than social rent housing, and the affordable rent homes allow affordable rent funding to build homes when rents are then capped at social rent levels.
And that's policy compliant?
Yeah.
Okay.
And Neil,
Michael, please.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say if Neil wanted to say anything else on this, but if you're happy with that answer, councillor stops.
I think Claire, are you still there? So we've been told it's policy compliant. It's London living rent or whatever that the newest kid on the block is in terms of names for affordable housing. But that's a genuine housing association.
And so this isn't the affordable rent that can go up to 80% of market rent then?
If it might be helpful if I just sort of provide a bit of an explanation. London affordable rent is the London Mayor's response to the affordable rent regime that did allow for rents at anything up to 80% of market. Now we all know that is a complete nonsense in an inner London location like Hackney. So the Mayor of London introduced London affordable rents that were pegged close to social rents. They're not exactly social rent, but they are close to social rent levels. So we consider it to be genuinely affordable, and that's reflected in the local plan, hence why we're saying that it is fully policy compliant.
Thank you. Michael.
Sorry, would it be okay to just ask a quick follow-up?
Okay.
Is that fixed then? So does that flat have to remain at that rent level?
Correct. Yep.
Forever. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Michael.
Thank you, Chair. At 6617, the regarding overshadowing, the overshadowing assessment has tested the impacts of the development on 8 outdoor amenity spaces. I'm just wondering, in the absence of a hard copy of A3 papers, it appears to me from the presentation that the actual rear block seems to be overshadowed by the two in front of it. It seems to be quite close, and I haven't got a sense of scale here. Can somebody explain, or explain, talk to that a little bit, who understand? Is that an issue? Is that something that was considered, or is there considered to be sufficient space in between the two blocks?
So, Councillor Levy, when looking at 6.6.17, that relates to overshadowing against properties outside of the site. So, are you talking about overshadowing of Block C to?
Yes.
Okay, so you're talking about overshadowing within the site. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so that's a different part of the report, but I can answer your question anyway. Given the layout of the development, it's considered that acceptable levels of daylight and sunlight will be received for all future residents. Each of the houses there's one house on each level, and each of these are provided with acceptable levels of daylight and sunlight and meet the BRE guidance in regards to the impacts.
Right, so there's no overshadowing. It seemed from the scale, I didn't have a sense of scale how much gap there is between the front and the rear elements of the development, and whether that was an issue.
Maybe Edward, do you know the exact distance between the two properties, or between the two blocks, Block A and B and Block C? Edward, is that something you know off the top of your head? It's not something that I have to hand at the moment.
Sorry, no, I'd have to measure it quickly. I haven't got the dimensions to hand.
Okay. But yeah, so as set out in the daylight and sunlight report, there is adequate light, and all the units meet the BRE requirements.
Okay. Chair, can I add just one more, please? I'm going to refer back to disabled parking. I know the development proposes 2 on-street disabled parking bays, and this is what I have an issue with, which is acceptable in principle. And these bays should be located to minimise the distance between the dwellings and disabled persons' parking bay. Now, that in itself is very loose in terms of allowing spaces to be put down, but in effect, it doesn't really define how close those bays will be. So, what we are proposing is that 2 bays are put down. If they're 100 meters apart, it is in fact saying we're not providing any disabled bays at all for that particular resident block, in which case we are not providing it. It's just that we know we're paying lip service to a
Michael, I'm sure we're not. Can we ask Joe what the answer to the question is? So, Joe, where's the parking bays going to go?
So I think, again, Councillor Levy, you know, you're definitely making a really good point there. I'm not actually sure of the specification. Alex, I'm not sure if you can help at all.
Yeah, I can help. At the moment, there is, I can show you on the pictures, there is a current existing crossover, which is proposed to be replaced. So if you can see here, these crossovers are going to be filled in. And so the proposed blue badge parking is close to the entrance point on Barrett's Grove at this point. So.
I mean, the litmus test should be that no bay should, for a disabled person, to be more than 50 meters away from where their residence is. And if that falls within that definition, that's fine. If it's not, then I think we ought to condition that it. Otherwise, we're not actually providing, because the criteria, the maximum criteria for a blue badge is 50 meters. If somebody can't manage 50 meters, then, because it's beyond that, then in effect, we're not providing that space.
Yeah, so as I said, it'll be right outside the front of the development, so on Barrett's Grove. So in this one, it will comply with the 50 meters.
Right.
Even if the person lives at the back of the site.
So I'm Joe, you might have to answer this. I'm not sure if the entrance is considered, because obviously the entrance to the site is on Barrett's Grove. So is that 50 meters in regards to the front entrance of the dwelling or the front entrance of the site?
Well, I think that would be quite material. Would you agree?
Yes. Yeah, I was asking Joe what the actual.
Oh, you're right. Sorry. Yeah.
So I think you raised a good point. Clearly, we would always, as you've contended, we would always want that 50 meter or less distance, because there wasn't provision to provide the on-site disabled bays. My understanding is we've done it as near as possible, but clearly, you know, I'm more than happy to have a look at this and then, you know, contact you after the meeting. I'm sorry not to be able to give a sort of more in-depth.
It's just that if it's beyond the 50 meter margin, then we are saying we're putting it down there, but it's not really compliant. And it doesn't help those who are disabled and need that space because they can't walk more than 50 meters. That's the point.
I very much agree. So if my understanding is absolutely there's no capacity to provide the spaces on site. It is policy compliant to then be on street, and we've ensured that those spaces are as close as possible to the development. But I absolutely understand the crux of your question. I'm obviously more than happy to have just to double check this, and then Alex and I can sort of look if there is anything we need to put in as part of the approval.
Okay, that's good.
Michael, I think you raise a good point, and I guess there's two things really. I mean, if somebody coming into that building needs these disabled bays, and they would have to take a view as to whether that they could live with what's being provided. But I think we do need to also be upfront and do the work on this beforehand, so that we can answer this question at committee. So I wonder, Natalie, if you can think about how we can make sure we, you know, the streets people have done this thinking before the meeting in future, so that we know whether we're going to get parking bays that are close to the properties or not, and at least we've got a reasonable debate.
I've raised this a number of times, of course, and you know it seems to be potluck really, and you know if we have clear understanding beforehand, that would be very useful. Yeah,
clearly it is potluck, you know, and trying to fit everything squeeze everything into these sites is not easy.
But we don't want to disadvantage those who are disabled.
We don't, and we want to. We want to. I mean, some people can walk that 50 meters. They can walk 100 meters, but they still need. And some people be in wheelchairs, all manner of different abilities to get these things. But we need to make sure that the departments have done the work on them, so at least we know what we're talking about.
I think
for that.
Just as a very final point, just to absolutely agree with what you've said, I think when we have been reviewing, we always review blue badge parking, and we really do try and put as much detail into that thought process as possible. In this instance, because we haven't been able to put a disabled bay on site, in effect, we're putting it as near as possible, and that's the quandary that we have, because I'm not sure how we could get it any nearer, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
we'd like to have a sense. Parking zones there.
We'd like to have a sense of how you're near as possible, how near that is.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, I'll confirm back to you.
I mean, the wheelchair units may be at the front of this building, or they may be at the back of this building, and Councillor Levy would like to have a sense of what's going on before he makes the decision. I think that's fair. Who was the next question?
Thank you, Chair.
Then Steve.
Did you call me, Vincent?
Yes, Katie. Then
sorry,
Steve.
you're a bit quiet. I just wondered if I could ask about the one studio flat in the development. We tend not to be very favourable towards studio flats, and I just wondered if the officers could comment on whether this was an attempt to sort of get round our room size requirements, because I see it doesn't have. It looks to me from this floor plan as though there isn't a separate kitchen either. So basically the kitchen and the bedroom and the living room are all one and the same, with just the bathroom closed off. Because when I've seen studio flats that were built maybe, I don't know, 20, 30 years ago, they might have a separate kitchen and a bed in the living area. This is, you know, an all-in-one job. Do we have policy about studio flats and floor space?
Yes, so I can answer this one, Councillor Hanson. So whilst studio units are not normally supported, this unit does meet the London Planned Space Standard, which is 37 square metres for a studio unit, particularly when it has a shower. And it's dual aspect with windows facing both north and south, and has its private owned terrace and defensible space. So whilst the space, it is a studio, it does meet the requirements of the technical housing standards. And given the positive impact and the wider benefit of the scheme, the inclusion of just one studio unit within this scheme is considered acceptable on balance in this instance.
Thank you. They could call it pocket living and we'd support it, perhaps. Steve.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to ask a couple of questions about the outdoor space. So my first question, and I apologise, I can't quite make out from the floor plans whether the ground floor units have private kind of balconies or terraces or whatever, private outdoor space. And then a note on the private and the children's play space were a good. This is a good 25% lower in terms of children's play space at 95 square meters instead of what we would usually require, which is 131 square meters of play space. So I wondered whether you could talk to those two things, please.
Absolutely. So, I think I can hear myself echoing. So in terms of the ground floor units, they do have outdoor amenity space. So this will be set. So it's, I'll try and get, I've got a landscape plan if you'd like me to get that up. But basically it'll be separated internal community shared space via, well, I've forgotten what the term is, but it will be separated.
Okay, great. And that's 5 square meters as well, is it? At least?
Yeah, that's for all of them. In terms of the children's play space, it is noted that the scheme does not provide the required 95 square meters. It is, sorry, the 130 square meters. It is noted that the play space is aimed primarily at under fives. So in terms of the provision of under fives play space, that it is considered that it's acceptable in that regard. It is also noted that there is existing play space for over fives, about 500 metres to the west of the site at Butterfield Green, but the itself is proposed is in regard to the under five play space. So I guess the non-compliance there is in regard to the over fives. So that's where the scheme has focused.
Chair, could I just ask a further question on that? Is that?
Yes.
Thank you. In terms of the, I know that the expectation is that there would be 13 children in those units. What's that calculation based on? Would you mind timing? I haven't seen it.
Yeah, sure. So that's based on standards that have been. Sorry, I'm just going to the relevant section in my report. So these are based on GLA calculations, which I guess for each borough, they've looked at central London and outer London, and so those densities are based by calculations that the GLA has undertaken for play requirements.
And do they
child yield?
Yes.
Yeah. So they look at the how many bedrooms. 3 bedrooms equals 2.4 children or something.
Yeah, and then for inner and outer boroughs, there's different units which you or different numbers that you then times it by to look at the yield for each unit.
And would we expect that to take into account the fact that this is sort of London affordable rent, so close to social housing, and it's a housing association?
So in terms of the child yield, it's not based on so whether it's affordable housing or market housing. It's just done as a number figure in relation to the number of units provided.
Because we would expect potentially more children in social housing units, I would suggest.
Potentially, but in terms of the calculations, that's not something that the yield looks at. So they're the GLA calculations that have been taken from a number of, in terms of they look at all the data of approved schemes and tenancy rates and things. So it's done over a 5-year period, I believe. And where do we get that calculation from?
Okay, it just seems quite disappointing that space falls quite significantly below 25% below what we would expect. I think for children, I think if we're looking to make Hackney a good place for play and for young people and children, especially in buildings that are developed for those who are looking for affordable space, then I wouldn't like to see us lose the play space and the ability for those children to have safe outdoor space. I think Butterfield Green being half a kilometre away and the other one being 800 metres or so away doesn't necessarily make up for it, I'm afraid.
Absolutely, that is why we have also we're requiring a play space contribution of approximately £11,000 to make up for this, given the I guess the constrained nature of the site. Once we've considered that the provision of the housing outweighs that, so we are requiring it as a contribution.
Okay, thank you.
That's right.
Thank you. Any more questions? Peter, one last question, and Claire Potter.
Thank you. Various questions. They should be quite straightforward for Alex. So, but the developer may want to come in at the end. So, if I go to my papers, sorry, I'm looking at this stuff online. I hate it. But Historic England talked about it being an area of archaeological interest. And they wanted an approval of the WSA before works begin on site. So has that happened? I'm sorry, I probably, if I'd had a paper report, I might have been able to read that. But have we met their concerns? Is number one question. I was surprised when I read this report to find that Dalston CAC had not come back to us, and they have come back to us now. And you said what they told us, and it was in the supplementary papers, but can we involve them? I mean, should we keep it, ask that the brick format comes back to committee? I always prefer it if people concerned, like Dalston CAC, get to do the bricks themselves, but it always seems terribly complicated. So perhaps we should, how can we deal with that, Alex? And then the other thing that I didn't understand from your presentation was you said, well, and again, this is either the developer or Natalie comes back, there is a potential for 100% affordable housing. And I'm sort of thinking, well, potential, that is a material planning consideration. Why is it potential? How definite is it? Can we make it more definite?
Okay, yes. So firstly, on your first question about the WSI, so the written scheme of investigation, this has been included as a condition and will be required to be discharged prior to commencement. In terms of the Dalston CAC and their comments in regards to the bricks, I note that there hasn't been any change to the bricks from the previous scheme. It's only in relation to the bonding. However, I have or details have been conditions and materials are required to be submitted as part of that condition for the details to be approved. Lastly, I don't know if Natalie, but Dalston CAC, it's an advisory committee. So in terms of making them more present in the process, maybe that's something that I guess Natalie would be better placed to answer. But as they are just an advisory committee, we do seek their comments, but I'm not sure how much further we could make them play, how much of a larger role we could have them play in the decision-making process. And then lastly, the affordable housing, this I might handball over to Neil on this one because he'll be better placed to answer this question.
Can I deal with that brick thing? I mean, if we've got reason to worry ourselves about the quality of the material, we could have the brick brought back. I don't get a sense from reading it. Lucianne, do we have a worry about the quality of the material at all?
No, Chair. The brick hasn't changed from what was presented previously. I'm not sure if the Dalston CAC had some misunderstanding about the materiality. There was always one type of brick being used from the previous iteration to this one now. There is a slight change of sort of brick bonding on certain parts of the elevation, and that's actually quite good because it sort of provides some articulation to the elevations, and we think that's very positive. In any event, and the indicative sort of brick that has been presented on all the visuals seem to be perfectly acceptable for the location. I think it's good that it's not a very dark brick. It relates well to the sort of like other sort of brickwork that's in the area. And in any event, we have, I have spoken to Alex and we have requested that the detail of the brick, including sort of the panel and so on, sort of the bonding and the mortar and all of that comes back, as a condition. We have no concerns about it. It's the indicative sort of images seem to indicate very high quality brick being proposed.
And just to ask the developer, your intention is to give us a high quality brick material, is it?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. I mean, it's been approached with that level of quality from the outset. We're more than happy, obviously, with the condition which we would normally expect anyway for that quality just to be tested again in terms of physical samples, which is the requirement of the policy, and further drawings as necessary for things like window detailing and what have you. So yeah, I mean, we would absolutely expect that in conservation area.
Thank you. Is that okay, Peter? We think we're okay.
And the remaining question was a clarification on why is it potentially 100% and can we do anything to make it 100%?
Okay.
Yeah, so Islington and Shoreditch Housing Association are the joint applicant on this scheme. Some of you may well be aware of Isha, but they're a long-established RP operating in Hackney that we work with quite regularly. Whilst they're a joint applicant, they don't currently own the site. but the plan is that they purchase the site from the current owner subject to planning permission. It's probably best described as this is a sort of a step in the process, if you see what I mean, towards delivering a 100% affordable scheme. All being well, further work between ourselves in the housing team and ISHA to bring forward a 100% affordable scheme will go on following this, subject to obviously looking at detailed build costs and tender evaluations and things like that. So we do hope to deliver a 100% affordable scheme here. As it stands, the scheme is policy compliant, 50% affordable.
And can I just bring in Olukunle, seeing as you're here and you're from ISHA, if you could just tell us what your ambition is, and you've heard we want to see a good quality scheme. You're not going to dumb down the brick, I hope. So what's your position on all of this?
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. ISHA intends to deliver a quality development. We have no intention of dumbing down the proposals. As Neil has mentioned, we will be working closely with Hackney to bring the scheme forward, and by obtaining permission from committee, all being equal, it allows us to take up, off-site contributions that have been given to us via a 106 agreement around Crown House. So this is a genuine opportunity to deliver some more affordable housing. The intention, as Neil has said, is to work towards providing 100% affordable housing.
Thank you. Okay, I think we've all know what we're doing. We've heard from everybody and there's no more questions. Gareth, can you... Oh, sorry, Claire Potter. I forgot you. I'm so sorry. You've been so quiet.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask about the energy strategy. I noticed in the document there was further work to be done on that. So I wondered what the current thinking is. I also noticed that there was talk about encouragement of looking at a district heating system. So if you could talk a little bit more on that, I suppose either Alex or Edward.
Yeah, I guess I'll just start off with saying that we have included a number of conditions, details of the energy system. So this includes full specification and detailed layout of the pump system, as well as sample of SAP and BER UKL sheets, as well as a number of submissions required in regards to overheating, as well as air quality monitoring. So in that regard, we will be requiring further submissions to detail that energy statement. But Edward, if you'd like to go into further detail.
Yeah, I don't think we can really add anything more to that at this stage. I think it's a stage in the process that we're at in terms of design. There are conditions, or there will be conditions in place that we need to satisfy. I think as the design evolves in terms of detail, not necessarily what the building looks like or how it's laid out, but how it's constructed, then we'll be able to deal with that level of detail. It's as much building fabric as the systems that are in place, in terms of energy creation that need that kind of that further detail work. So as Alex says, it's captured by condition, and that's something that we would normally expect from a scheme like this at this stage.
Thank you. Can I ask a further question, Chair?
Yes, please do.
Given this is a full housing development now, and development should target net zero carbon. Do you want to comment on how far you are in that kind of thinking? I presume because the heating system rationale isn't fully completed yet, that figure may change. But I wondered whether you wanted to talk about, where you are with working towards net zero carbon.
Well, before Edward goes into any detail, I will just say that we have requested, at the moment there is I think 14.7 tonnes that need to be offset every year over 30 years from their energy reports. So we have included that as a carbon contribution offset, which our section 106 SPD does allow, but I'll allow Edward to go into further detail.
Yeah, absolutely. Without repeating what you've said, Alex, it's any shortfall would be captured by the contribution. Obviously, the intention is to get as close to it as possible, you know, through the working up in detail of the construction and everything that comes with that. But I think it's reported in the addendum that the figure relating to the contribution to be secured on Section 106.
Edward, it's of such a height that it could be a cross-laminated timber structure. Have you considered that at all? I must have asked you this last time.
I think you probably did, and I probably had the same answer in that it's not my kind of genuinely it's not my field of expertise, and we haven't got the consultant, you know, on the call tonight. But I mean, all of that would have been considered in terms of the options, you know, for the scheme, including, you know, what it is in terms of use and, you know, the scale of it, and, you know, that's all encompassed within the report that was submitted with the application. But, you know, it's genuinely a case of, you know, the detail of that will be worked up in due course, and we have the barriers established by the condition that we need to clear. So.
Well, I hope you do look into it. If you know, just across the road from you, there is a cross-laminated timber building that has won awards, and that will deal with Councillor Potter's 17 tonnes of carbon for about the next 20 years. So I just encourage you to think with your client, whether it's the old client or the new one, as to whether you can do a superb cross-laminated timber building to complement the one across the road. We've clearly prompted a couple of questions. Claire, again, is that you asking more questions? No? Peter, you've got a hand up. This is definitely the last one from you, Peter.
Okay, just to say, I mean, I have raised with officers, and we need to deal with this. Given the problems residents around me are having with cross-laminated timber, we have to get clarity about whether this is a safe build material, given the government's
That's not a planning issue.
So just to make it clear that what you're saying is not necessarily the view of every member of this committee, Chair.
That's not a planning issue. Mine wasn't a planning issue either, Peter, so perhaps we're square. Okay, let's talk about the recommendation then, Gareth.
Okay, I am just opening up the paper now. 91 Barrett's Grove. We are looking for the recommendation summary, which is as follows. Grant planning permission subject to conditions and completion of a legal agreement.
Okay, so all those in favour, please show. Okay, so I've got Vincent in favour, Michael.
In favour.
Katie.
In favour.
Steve.
In favour.
Peter.
In favour.
Claire Potter.
In favour.
Okay, that's all. Those against? Oh, I think Claire Joseph's frozen on us, just when it mattered. Okay, Claire's counted out. She's not here for the vote. Are there any abstentions? There aren't, are there? Okay.
Oh, I've got Claire Joseph back. Oh, yes, she's back.
Christine, are you happy we include her vote? Claire, which way are you voting? Are you for or against? Or frozen?
It's frozen again. But otherwise, I would have said yes, because she's the majority of the meeting.
I think we've got a counter out. I think we've got a majority without her.
Sorry, Councillor Joseph.
Okay. Put it down as a non-participant, I guess.
Put it down as frozen.
Frozen out. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. And we've got delegated decisions to note. Look forward to, I'll keep an eye on that property. I live just down the road from it, so
thank you.
Look forward to seeing it go up. And
and the parking provision, please, Chair.
Say again?
The provision.
Can't hear you.
So, the disabled parking provision.
We're going to have a discussion about that, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, we've taken that on board, I think, what you said. And okay. Okay, bye-bye then.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, officers. Thank you, members.
Thanks very much, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good evening.